JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. May 6th, 2024, about 8:50 here on this fine morning. It'll be really quick. I'm going to rant really fast, so apologize if I talk quick. But start of the week, markets coming off back-to-back weeks of gains. Um, S&P, I think was up 0.8%, and that was on the heels of the Fed meeting. And then we had Apple earnings, and then the unemployment numbers came in worse than expected. I actually think I put the GDP numbers on the watch list, but that was the week before. Anyway, this week a little lighter in regards to data. We do have over 1,200 companies reporting earnings, and then there's Fed speak this week. And the last time we had Fed speak last month, we had that big sell-off at the end of the day. I think it was at 3 o'clock. All of a sudden, markets just started selling off. It seemed like every Fed speaker that had some quotes, and a lot of it was skewed a little bit hawkish. And then at one point, I think it was the cash carry person from Minneapolis came out and pretty much put a nix on the possibility of any rate cuts in 2024. And that, I guess, people are looking for an excuse to sell, whatever the case may be, and the market sold off. Hopefully, that's not the case today. We got two Fed speakers today, and the Minneapolis Fed speaker, Kashkari, speaks tomorrow. So, uh, hopefully, we're nothing crazy like we had the last time was Fed speaks. Market can find some footing here. Go from there. The SPY closed over its 50-day moving average, just barely 511.07 is the 50. It closed at 511.29, and now that 512.50 handle I've been talking about for the last week or so. Hopefully, we can get over that today or tomorrow, and then some nice chop here and melt higher into the end of the week. That'll be a nice setup. And then we have CPI data next week, which will be the next big data piece. Also want to see the names that are over their 50-day moving average start to trend higher. Started on Friday, 43% or so of the S&P is now over the 50-day moving average. Hopefully that continues to go. Some of the names I'm watching this week, and first is Adobe. So I finally re-entered Adobe calls last week after watching it. Finally seems to have found a bottom. Destroyed after its last earnings from 580 and change. It was actually up at 640 in the middle of February, and then earnings day, I think it was at 575 or so, and just tanked all the way into the under 500. Sold off all the way down to 460 last week, and then just seems to have found a bottom at the start of May. I think it's a great story. It's not going. It's not. I don't think it's going much lower, if at all. If anything, I think it's going to melt into its next earnings report, which will be melt higher, sometime in June. Got some strikes to play this week. I may look for some later dated calls if it breaks over $500. Won't take much. 2.5% move. I really like this setup this week. CDLX reports earnings Wednesday after the close. Another nice move on Friday, up nearly 6%. I think that's three straight days of gains from under $12. Locked some of my June strikes in, added some May inexpensive speculative calls. I'll try to look to lock some of the Mays in as it continues to rally. It was 15.21 on Friday. I think it breaks over that, heads towards 16. You know the whole story. I think it's not only is the story great, but then you have the insider. Clifford Sozen owns 14% stake. Carvana, which is at $122 here in the pre-market, keeps going higher. The higher that goes, the more the higher the likelihood that he adds more to his stake in Cardlytics, is my humble opinion. So really like this name for upside this week into earnings. But you never know with earnings. They could have some kind of snafu on earnings call, the conference calls, something with their guidance, and maybe the stock doesn't do what I think it's going to do. And then I don't want to be in a situation where I lose my profit. So again, I already locked the Junes in. I'll lock some of the Mays and ride the rest free into earnings. Not much here to add on Roku. Hopefully this is the week Roku finds a bid. What's the news of Paramount this morning? Is it a consortium of, maybe I have the wrong stock. Well, forget that then. Uh, but Roku gap, it seems to always move higher in the morning and after the open and then fade. One of these times it doesn't do that. And I think it heads into the 60s and then possibly in 70 range. So I'll continue to watch that one for upside. Baidu, it gapped higher on Friday, and then the premiums on the calls didn't do much. I was expecting them to be substantially higher. They weren't. And then the stock chopped around. Didn't want to lose my profits, so I closed my calls out for a very small gain. I'll continue to watch that one. They report earnings next week. I think it heads into the 120s and beyond. It's sitting here at 113.80. So definitely watch that one. This morning you had benchmark adjusting their price target to 180 from they lowered their price target to 180 from 210, considering the stock is at 113. That's probably just an adjustment from a while ago. But I think that heads higher in the coming days and weeks, but I'll be selective. It's been a tough one. Every time Baidu looks like it's ready to break, it's found some resistance, but finally over that 110 handle, I think that's a key spot. So if it holds over that, I think it heads higher into earnings next week. Uh, IIPR reports earnings on Wednesday as well, but their earnings, they're a REIT, so it's not really about their EPS and revenues and stuff. It's just how many locations, how many rent locations they have. What does that look like? The dividend and their cash position. How much debt have they paid down? All that fun stuff. So that update would be more important than earnings. I think I keep saying it's going over 120. It actually tested nearly 112 on Friday. I think it gets over that today. And I'm still looking to lock some of my June strikes in. I locked a lot of the Mays in, and then I'll ride the rest into earnings. I think that's about it. I put on the watch this morning as well. Some of the earnings names I'm watching: Twilio, Unity. I've always loved Unity, and you look at AppLovin is on a tear. I'm surprised Unity hasn't really moved in lockstep. So those are two names I'm watching. Win Resorts is always a name. I haven't traded that in a long time. Might look at that one. And then last but not least is AI. And AI has been slowly melting higher, similar to Baidu. The premiums aren't going up in lockstep with the stock, but I think that heads over 27. They report earnings in a couple of weeks. I'll possibly look for some calls to play, or at least encompass their earnings. And that's it, folks. We got about 5 minutes to the open, 5 minutes to 9 o'clock. Hopefully, we have a rock and roll day and rock and roll week. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.